So I'm very glad that Jim Keenan joined also this group for a presentation of his topic about the relationship, ethics and university from the perspective of United States experience. And he did also a very good book on university ethics. Jim Keenan is professor at Boston College for theological ethics, and he was advisor of the American Bishop Conference in the field of public health care. He is also the leader of, or he was the leader of the biggest theological ethical network, Catholic Theological Ethics in World Church, about 1,400 moral theologians from all the countries of the world. We gathered last year in Sarajevo, about 500 of us, and it was a very nice meeting. And I'm really glad that he's in Slovenia this year for summer school and also for some other talks that he's ready to present us. So, floor is yours.
So what I would like to do is just read a short paper. It gives you an idea of what I'm trying to raise as an issue. And my concern is, what I would like to hear from you is, what are the ethical issues at universities here in Slovenia? So 2 weeks ago I gave this paper in Malta, and all these hands went up at the end. Oh, we got to tell you about our problems. And for instance, in Malta, at the University of Malta, they're all given the same criteria for promotion in terms of publication. And it's dictated by arts and science, arts. So they have to do publications in articles. But scientists, their output is measured in different modes. And so scientists, social scientists, find right away that they're discriminated against.
Hello.
So this should go about 27 minutes maximum, and it should be entertaining, because I'm talking about the university as not being terribly ethical. And you'll see why I raised this question. And as a matter of fact, in the States, but elsewhere now, it's picking up as an issue. 4 years ago, I published a book, University Ethics: How Colleges Can Build and Benefit from a Culture of Ethics. I would like to share with you how I came to the topic, why I think the university needs ethics, why it avoids ethics, and how we can begin to overcome the obstacles to building a culture of ethics. In 2002, the Boston sexual abuse scandal broke, and as a priest teaching ethics in Boston, I found myself immediately caught up in the scandal. One of the first lessons that we learned from the scandals was that though the churches taught ethics to their parishioners, it never trained its own administrators, nor its clergy and lay ministers in professional ethics. Though it taught ethics to others, it did not practice it because it did not believe it needed ethics. It presumed if it could teach ethics, it did not need ethics. So as a seminarian, I was taught 3 courses in ethics: sexual ethics, medical ethics, and foundational ethics. And it was also that I could instruct others on how to be ethical. And there was nothing about ministerial ethics at all in my formation. 7 years ago, after writing and editing several books on church ethics, I began wondering about the other institution that teaches ethics, the university. I began looking at the newspapers to see if there were any university scandals. What I found were many scandals, but not anyone calling them ethical ones. What I found were our universities are riddled with ethical compromise, but rarely, even when the press exposes something shameful about a university, do we identify the issue as a lack of ethics? Now, the university scandals in the US are different from those in Europe. So while I speak of some of ours, I ask you to begin thinking of some of yours. And I ask you to share them with me today. Every morning, I found something in the newspapers to say about, for instance, a university athlete. We have sports on our campuses because many of our campuses are residential. About 50% of our universities are residential. Where I teach, 9,000 students live. We have a stadium of 44,000 seats. So sports is a very big, the highest paid employee there is, to my knowledge, the athletic director, then the president, then the dean of the law school, and then the chair of the economics department, basically in that order. So university athletes, the question is, why are they recruited? So at a school like mine, we have a graduation rate of about 97% of our athletes. Other schools, the schools that are famous in basketball or football, they have something like a 15% rate of graduation of them. So the question is, why do they have these students in school? Is it for entertainment, for the university, or does education have anything to do with it? A development or fundraising scheme riddled with ethical problems. Probably the strongest department in terms of ethics today at a university is the advancement, the development, the fundraising. Because in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, they would get gifts from someone and then find out that the gift giver wanted something else. And so they found out that they needed to outline what were the responsibilities of the gift. So the people who know ethics best are the people who are raising money. So that's good. A sexual assault on a college campus. Did you know that the most dangerous place for a young woman in the US is often enough her college campus? That she's more likely to be sexually assaulted on a college campus than anywhere else in the United States. Cheating scandals. When I was writing my book, Harvard had a cheating scandal. It was as if a present came from across the river. A government or trustee member's conflict of interest with oversight. Or, now I don't know what happens here, but I know in Malta they have it. In the United States, we have what are called contingent or adjunct faculty. These are faculty who are not there for research, but they're there to teach some of the courses that we have. And so they're in the past, we used to have, most of our faculty were either tenure track or tenured. And now only about 45% of the university is tenure track or tenured. And the majority are what we call contingent faculty. They're cheaper hires and that they have fewer benefits. And they do more work in terms of teaching hours. So we have two entities of faculty now at most American universities. Every day I could find something that suggested that university ethical scandals were commonplace. I began wondering, are these issues sensational but isolated moments across the academic landscape, or is there something more systemic here? I came to believe it was systemic. In other forms of professional life, we have long recognized a strong connection between the lack of a professional ethics in a particular institutional setting and the lack of an ethical consciousness in that culture. I believe the absence of a professional ethics is evidence of and symptomatic of disinterest in ethics. Simply put, our universities do not believe that they need ethics. Like the church, they seem to sense that if they can teach it, they don't need it. This is odd. We can certainly acknowledge that at any university, anyone can take a course on business ethics, nursing ethics, legal ethics, medical ethics, or journalistic ethics. Ethics courses in the different professions are easily available at almost any university. In fact, generally speaking, if one is looking for ethical training in a profession, the courses are found at a university. The one major professional institution about which you cannot find any ethics courses listed among the hundreds of ethics courses in any country, at any university, is precisely the university. If you search for a course on university ethics, you will simply not find one. Though professors and their deans recognize the need to teach professional ethics in all the other professions, they show no real interest in professional ethics for their own profession. Most of all, the administrators, in particular those at the highest level of the university, from vice presidents and the president to the board of trustees, have not been trained in professional university ethics. Small wonder, then, that they do not promote a culture of ethical consciousness and accountability. My claim that the university has no evident interest in ethics cannot be addressed by simply developing a code of conduct for professors, students, coaches, admissions officers, and the rest. Before we ever articulate a professional code of conduct for each community within the university, I think we need to develop a culture of awareness among faculty, staff, administrators, and students that for a university to flourish, it needs to recognize the integral constitutive role of ethics in the formation of a flourishing community. None of us, nor our colleagues throughout the university, are really trained in the standards we use for instance, grading papers, for seeing students, for maintaining office hours, for evaluating our colleagues or prospective hires. We have not discussed with other colleagues in any professional way anything about professional confidentiality, boundaries with our students, writing letters of evaluation, keeping our contracts. We have not addressed the fact that our salaries are disproportionate and that promotion decisions sometimes lack objectivity. We do not have professional questions about our university investments, budgets, or our board of governors. And nor do we review adequately fellow faculty after they have been promoted or after being given prestigious positions. Matters like sustainability on campus, faculty or staff unions, university relations with local communities, students' rights, the rights of part-time faculty, the Board of Governors' terms of office, conflict of interest laws, university workers' benefits, immigration issues, racial tensions, the overemphasis on research and the failure to reward good teaching, or the harm of classism experienced by many students unable to keep up with the cost of education, might occasionally garner an individual faculty member's attention, but for the most part, we leave that to academic administrators, who, like the faculty, have no training in ethics. I became chair of my department, and I had been working in my department for quite a while. And when I became chair, all of a sudden I found out who were the faculty who really didn't do any work, and who were the faculty who did. When I was a faculty member, a senior faculty member, there's 35 members in my department, I just presumed everybody was just wonderful. But when I became chair, and those of you who are administrators, you begin to see the life of the university in a whole different way. Our accountability is fundamentally vertical. It's not horizontal. Faculty are not accountable to one another. They're accountable to those who are above them, to our chairs and deans, but not to one another, and certainly not to our students, nor to the university community per se, nor to stipulated community standards. Instead, like the clergy, we mind our own business for the most part and make few claims and lay fewer expectations on one another. Let me conclude with one compelling example of the lack of any interest in university ethics: the cataloging of books on professional ethics in university libraries. Here I offer what I found in my own university library. We have over 3 million books stacked in our university library. There, each book is assigned a subject heading. Under the subject of medical ethics, that we use for teaching medical ethics, we have 1,321 books. Under business ethics, 599. Under nursing ethics, 234. Under legal ethics, 129. Under clergy ethics, we have 25 brand new books. This is what scandal brings you. Scandal brings you ethics. That's my key. Scandals bring you ethics. And under academic ethics, we have 5 books that are just coming off the press.
This lack of books on academic ethics is alarming in as much as academics, more than business people, nurses, doctors, and lawyers, develop their careers precisely by writing books. Our métier and promotional mantra is publish or perish. While we publish books on professional ethics in other fields, no one really has had any interest in the field of professional academic ethics to write a book about it. Concomitantly, just as we do not write books on the topic, nor do we teach the course either. But then none of us seem to be aware of this. So I want to just bring up two issues that I think are obstacles to even bringing up a culture of ethics. So to say, I don't think it's easy to even address this topic. And the two issues I want to bring up is the isolating individualistic world of the faculty and what I call the medieval landscape of the university, the geography of the university. So first, the isolating individualistic world of the faculty. Unlike most professionals and civil servants, we university faculty function very much as individuals in the academy. Aside from department meetings, we study alone, work alone, teach alone, write alone, and lecture alone. We also grade students individually and write their singular letters of recommendation. We cannot underestimate the individualism of our scholarly formation and our professional lifestyle. While almost every contemporary professional works in some form of partnership or teamwork, police officers with their partners, firefighters with their ladder companies, healthcare workers, doctors, physicians, nurses with their team, lawyers with their firms, we faculty train alone and then virtually work alone. Think of the dissertation. What other field of work requires its professional formation to be at least 4 years of working alone on one's own project, with the last 2 years spent effectively in solitary confinement? Why is this, the highest expression of academic wisdom, so individualistic and so isolationist? Someone might say, yes, but there is mentoring. However, even the relationality in the mentoring is not terribly thick. How many hours during those 4 years does the advisor and mentee actually see and sit with one another? So in 4 years, there are 35,040 hours in 4 years. So anybody who's done a PhD, think of your PhD and the studies that it was, I'd say there's roughly 4 years coursework in doing the dissertation. That's 35,040 hours. How many hours do you need? And you need more than 2 hands to count those hours. Is it at all analogous to other professional relationships where juniors literally shadow their mentor, whether they're in medicine, whether they're in law, whether they're in other areas? One interesting corollary to the highly individualistic world we work in is found in the university's prescription that we write with a detached, inaccessible, frigid, dense style. An emotionally detached place like the academy trains us to be wary of writing anything accessible to others outside our field because it could compromise the style of a professorial reputation. Martin Anderson describes well academic publishing. An academic book or a scholarly article is not expected to sell many copies, nor appeal to many people outside a select intellectual circle. Isolated, the typical academic intellectual operates freely, uninhibited by the judgment of outsiders, subject only to the verdict of colleagues who themselves are judged by the same narrow criteria. So I'm in a theology department. We have 5 areas. One is history, one is Bible, one is comparative, one is ethics, and one is history, Bible, ethics, systematics. And I don't know anything in terms of the overall academic prowess, capacity of people, other than when I pick up a sheet and look at their CV. There's no real familiarity with that other than that. The chair knows a lot more, and if there's a vice chair, then the vice chair does too. But even my colleagues, I don't really know how good they are, and I certainly don't know much about their teaching capacity, because that's one thing as an academic I stay out of. I don't want people judging my teaching, and they don't want their teaching to be judged. Students may judge them, but faculty stay out of that in many instances. Certainly, many faculty have great relations with a variety of members of the university. My argument is, however, that professionally speaking, there is not a structure that promotes those relationships. Teaching, grading, and mentoring is measured against singular professionals. But it is not just in those areas of university work that we are standalone individuals. Think, for instance, of office hours. Now, who is the fellow that I just...
Boyko.
Yeah, he was telling me that when he came to the United States to have office hours, and he had office hours at the University of Arizona, he said he was really surprised because he walked into his office hours and there were students waiting to see him. So in the States, we take office hours, all students, it's packed. If you have office hours in a given hour, you're going to see 8 to 12 students, easily. Now, from what I understand, that's not the case here. No, at least. So, as a matter of fact, that encounter hasn't yet developed. But by us, we have 4 hours a week of being available, 4 hours a week. And that's the only time. And it says, so I'm saying, think for instance of office hours. In the US, every full-time faculty member is responsible to post 4 hours of availability to meet with students each week. I do not know if you in Slovenia have this, that is, office hours where the faculty member is available for students. Still for us, those 4 hours weekly is fairly minimal. What other professional corporate life lets their employees come to work whenever they want to? Other than the classes we teach and occasionally monthly department meetings we have to attend, most faculty can choose to arrive for any office hours that they establish. Not only are we free to name our office hours, but there is rarely any expectation to host office hours during any specific time that would be convenient to others. By office hours, we are required to be available to another person, presumably a student in need, yet we can set those office hours whenever we want. And people have a propensity in the States to set them for Friday mornings, like from 8 until 12. And that's when students are getting ready. Yet we can set those office hours whenever we want, and rarely are we required to be there in the office for more than those 4 hours a week. What other professional has such autonomy? Now, I am not suggesting that faculty have only 4 hours of work. Teaching, letters of recommendation, publishing, and other academic and administrative demands, many faculty have a full week of work, but that work is on our time, our place, and again, usually alone. Hardly any other modern professional works this way. Still, we should be able to see that if individual faculty took the initiative to enter into practices of solidarity with others, this could lead to the possibility of developing and sustaining an ethical community within the university. When faculty elect to join a seminar, volunteer to be on a university committee, offer to be the faculty advisor of a student club, or host their own class at home with a meal, they enter into relationships that make possible community. But these turns to the practices of solidarity are themselves turns to ethical practices. With ethics, community can flourish. Without ethics, the community breaks down. The second is the university landscape. The social contours of the university do not foster community, friendship, or solidarity, but rather departmentalizes personal groupings routinely. Any reading of the literature of the university tells us that the university structure is very clear in its vertical direction. Each cluster knows without a doubt who answers to whom in the upwardly oriented structure of unilateral accountability. The university horizontally is not terribly clear, however, because its terrain is defined by departments unto themselves. So I don't know how many faculty are here. We have 600 faculty who are, we have now 450 faculty who are tenure or tenure track. And we have, at our faculty, we have this number that's very hard to figure out of what is contingent faculty. And that's probably much better than many other universities, but we probably have another 200 to 250 faculty as well, besides this 450. So we have roughly about 700 faculty at the university. I think that the university's horizontal structure is best understood as fiefdoms, a perfect description of the university inasmuch as both are deeply rooted in the medieval world. I believe that the university, stemming as it does from the medieval era, is affected structurally by its roots. Not only does its hierarchical structure make its accountability flow unilaterally and singularly vertically, but it also inherits the geography of fiefdoms that hinder matters not only of accountability and transparency, but also of relationality, distributive justice, and the common good. None of us would know what one another's salaries are in any way. We wouldn't have any idea of what it is. But we have the Chronicle of Higher Education now that publishes the salaries of faculty departments. So you'll be able to see what does the theology department of Boston College provide as an average salary. And you'll be able to see what it provides to the economics department, but you'll see what a school of management or what a scientist receives. You get that, but only because the Chronicle of Higher Education has made it their business of making those salaries big. They're not visible at the university. The university has, as I say, no interest in these matters. And there's a certain way that only the Chronicle of Higher Education can provide us with this. Universities are organized by departments, a structure that gives the suggestion that each department shares something in common with another, but given the hierarchical structures of the university, such a shared identity functions less in the operations and more in the purported mission design. Departments are part of the fiefdom structure, in part because higher-level administrators can treat departments differently without others in other departments knowing any differently. Again, when I became chair, I would attend these meetings of board of chairs, and all the chairs would be around. But most of us were trying to find out what was happening in one another's department, and what was the dean doing with the different departments. So we had no way of knowing what the dean was doing, because set policies were really distinguished by the dean's relationship with each department based upon the expectations outside the university of what economists should get as opposed to what lawyers should get and the rest. Within the university, we have no familiarity with what the standards were. Departments are part of the fiefdom structure. In fact, in many ways, these administrators function effectively as what I would call feudal lords. Life within the department is determined much less by what happens in other departments as by what happens between senior administrators and that department. At universities, at least, the administrators know that knowledge is power. Fiefdoms are not only seen in the academic sector, but in student affair life as well. Just as faculty might not know the student's personal conduct, neither does student affairs know the student's academic life. Similarly, health and counseling services at the university, development and alumni relations, athletics, dining services, and many other departments function separately and are accountable to the different university managers who make their own assessments according to their specific domain's criteria. In short, the standards, communications, and information of each domain are not set across the university itself, but are particular to and remain within the domain of each particular fiefdom. It is for this reason that the only two constituencies who know what happens at the university are the clients, the students, and the president. In terms of ethics, this is fairly problematic because, as we know from Aristotle, there is some relationship between the polis, or the actual community, and the common good that makes possible human flourishing. To the extent that members of the polis, as a society, participate and contribute to the common good, there is human flourishing. But at the university, the players on the ground do not see a coherency in the community, nor an operative notion of the common good. The bureaucracy of the university does not have an internal horizontal structure of engagement, nor are there any inbuilt structures of horizontal accountability within the university itself. Worse still, the bureaucracy of the university shows no sign of checking itself, continues expanding, and eventually is no longer sustainable. All these challenges prompt us to ask, how can we overcome the obstacles to good community and provide a sharing of the common good? When we hear the hardships of contingent faculty and when we see the rising we have tuition and other unsustainable solutions, coupled at the same time with expanding bureaucracies, their attendant appointments and competitive salaries, we realize that university fiefdoms are very much the most compelling of all challenges. I could conclude by offering you broad strokes of best practices for developing a culture of ethics. I could suggest that we get into the habit of asking, but is it ethical when something happens? Whenever we hear, for instance, about a dubious practice. Or that we could try to forge relations with other colleagues. That we could try to restore the bridge between academic and student affairs. That we systematically try to create structures that recognize ethical conduct and sanctions unethical conduct. That we take our university mission statements seriously and apply them across the board. That we look to building community at a university so as to foster our common mission. I can tell you also about my own work at my university, how I've started seminars for adjunct contingent faculty, began planning seminars for administrative assistants and for workers in facilities and in dining services. I held a conference 2 years ago at Boston College where we had 20 speakers, each talking about their particular indication of scandal: presidential salaries, irresponsible boards, unfair admissions. But having to listen to one another to realize that all these problems are happening at one place, a university. They need to see that these dots are connected. I have brought my argument to my own guilds, the Society of Christian Ethics and the Catholic Theology Society of America. We have sustained networking going on, and I'm now the new president of the Society of Christian Ethics, and in 2022, hosting an entire conference on university ethics. But I want to close on a personal experience about coming clean about university ethics. I want to invite you into the way I see things today by first acknowledging how I let myself stay unaffected. I want to suggest to you that you might do the same. For coming clean is, I think, the first step for working for a culture of ethics at a university. In my 17 years at my university, Boston College, I was at Fordham University first, then I was at the Western Jesuit School of Theology for 9 years, and now these 17 years at Boston College. I have been working on faculty development, mentoring junior tenure faculty, and developing programs for graduate students. From advising and mentoring to develop a culture of teaching formation in our doctoral program. We used to have in our doctoral program, people had to become TAs or TFs, teaching assistants or teaching fellows. And it was basically so that they paid back to us the support that they got from us. But we didn't teach them anything about teaching. We just said, assist this person. We would send people out, just assist this person, and they'd say, okay, what does that mean? And then they'd ask their predecessor and find out it means whatever the faculty member says. So we had no standards, we just told them to do it. And then we would have teaching fellows, and we were giving them courses to teach. But we spent a lot of time teaching them metaphysics, but we didn't teach them anything about teaching. And it wasn't until when we invited back our alumni, we asked them, what do you need in your PhD program? They said, it would have been nice if you taught us how to teach. And we never even entertained that question, but that's because we never brought alumni back to talk about what they do, or what they didn't do, or what they didn't learn. In my university, in my department, we have contingent or adjunct faculty. And so in my department, we have about 25 tenure track faculty, and then about 10 contingent faculty, so there are 35 of us there. I knew next to nothing about those other 10. And as I researched more and more, I realized that the gulf between tenured faculty and adjunct faculty has few secure passageways connecting us. I know little about their terms of employment, and like other tenured faculty, I have unconsciously but conveniently worn blinders about their work and their context. I managed to tell myself that they do not concern me. They do, but I managed to tell myself otherwise. A few years ago, an adjunct, who was also a journalist, Lisa Liberty Becker, asked to interview me because she is writing on adjunct faculty and heard that I was writing this book on university ethics. In the course of the interview, she concurred that I had a pretty good handle on the issues that adjuncts face. But before we descended into the details, she asked me an important question. What do you know about adjuncts in your own institution? Next to nothing, I replied. I had managed to tell myself that they do not concern me. Then I added, I'm acting chair next semester. Assuredly, I will find out. And I did. I say this simply to let full-time faculty get some space to acknowledge that they probably conveniently do not know much or even care much about other teaching faculty. As I argue at length in my book, there is within the university structure a cultural myopia that allows us to not think about one another, including our colleagues who teach, but who do not have the same contracts that we do. So yes, that cultural narrow vision that we have is the fault of the structure of the university, but it is our fault too. Those same faults allow us to ignore issues of student welfare, accountability, transparency, and the rest. If you resonated with the argument of this talk, I ask you to consider how the university in its structure and how the professoriate in its vocation have given you the chance to pursue your academic interest without bothering you about a culture of ethics. If you can, think for a moment, have you allowed yourself to settle into that complacency? And if you have, should you not at least admit it? Recognizing how we really think of one another at the university strikes me as a worthy starting point for any discourse on university ethics. Thank you. So I'm interested in what you think of this. Now, as I said, in our university, we have very different issues. We have, as I say, 9,000 students. On a Thursday night, we could have, we also have a law, for instance, in the United States, that no one can drink under the age of 21. This is Ronald Reagan. And therefore, the students do not learn how to drink in homes or at family socials or anything like that because they're not by law allowed to do that. So they drink on campuses. We have prohibition on campus. So they smuggle in liquor, they drink, and they get drunk. And they also make sure that if they're going to a university event, they've had enough liquor so that they won't feel left out when they see the rest of the people who are older than 21 there. This is why sexual assault is higher at a university than any other place. So we have a problem with drinking and with sexual assault on our campus. So right away, that's very different from almost anything that happens outside of the United States. This is a phenomenon that's just the United States. But the relationship among faculty, I think, is something. I think that the way governments establish funds for their universities and how those universities compete for those funds is an issue that's very different from us, where we have many universities that are private as opposed to public. And I think if you start talking about how we evaluate one another and what criteria we use for that, we'll find that in many universities there are questions. But the biggest question I have is, do people working in a university ever ask, is this ethical? Is this procedure, this method, this protocol that we have, is this program ethical? Because the question, is it ethical, is the question that we keep teaching in all our professional ethical courses. We teach journalists, physicians, nurses, business people, all finance people, all to ask the question, but is it ethical? But do we teach one another, whether we're colleagues as faculty or administrators, that the question of university ethics is a standard by which we should hold one another accountable? So that's my argument in a nutshell. But I'm interested now in what you do.